Hey Professor Derschlag, this is my injury analysis and TRX reflection video analysis assignment. So the athlete that I'm choosing to do for this assignment is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is a current professional basketball player from Canada. He plays for the Denver Nuggets. He was drafted by them in 2016 from the University of Kentucky and is currently their starting point guard. So the injury that we're going to be looking at is an ACL tear that he experienced in the 2021 NBA playoffs against the Golden State Warriors. The injury occurred when he was driving down the lane, and he planted his foot with a lot of force, and it put a lot of pressure on his ACL, causing it to rupture. We know this because we can see when he planted his tibia into the ground, his femur kept going and it went beyond the tibia, thus putting a lot of pressure on his ACL, causing it to rupture like that. Immediately, some of the signs and symptoms we would have seen is guarding. He immediately went down and was grabbing at his leg. We could also tell that he was in a lot of pain because he was rolling on the ground and banging on the ground as well. His knee was definitely unstable as he needed help getting up, and he also needed assistance walking off of the court back to the locker room. Once they got to the locker room, the team doctors definitely would have been able to see that his knee was swollen, and they probably would have seen some bruising as well. So Jamal Murray's ACL tear ended up affecting his tibia and femur as they are connected via the anterior cruciate ligament, which was no longer there after he tore it. Some of the muscles that would have been affected would have been his hamstring and his quads, as they might have been experiencing some muscle atrophy because they were not being used as they once were. His knee would also be experiencing a lot of pain and tenderness just in the whole area of where the injury occurred. The injury definitely affected his stability of his knee, as he was on crutches for a little while after that, and he was not able to walk normally. The team doctors ended up having Jamal Murray get an MRI scan, proving that he had a grade 3 ACL tear, meaning that he completely ruptured his ACL tendon. If the Denver Nuggets did not want to do an MRI, they could have done the anterior drawer test or the Latchman's test to see if there's any stability left in his knee. However, doing that right after the injury occurred would have been very painful for Jamal, and the MRI in general is just more reliable and will provide the doctors with more information than the Latchman's test or the anterior drawer test. So a treatment plan that would help the knee pain go down in the short term would be using RICE, which is rest, ice, compression, and elevation, as well as the TENS unit. And we'll get into that more, but the TENS unit will also help in reducing muscle atrophy. And in general, those things are going to both help reducing the pain that he's dealing with. And then in the long term, some things like stretching are going to be really big, and just getting a full range of motion to reduce the stiffness and help get him back to his sport. So the rehabilitation plan that Jamal Murray could follow would first be preparing for his surgery. So in order to do that, the biggest things there are going to be to reduce the pain and reduce the swelling. So some of those things are going to be using the TENS unit just to still get contraction and still get muscle firing in his quads and his hamstrings to keep them from going into muscle atrophy. But he could have also done some things like quad isometric contractions just to help his quads to contract and, yeah, like I was saying, keep his muscles fresh and keep them working so that they're not going to lose as much muscle. And then doing some slight range of motion stuff just to help everything stay fresh, help keep it from getting stiff, just so that when he goes into surgery and comes out of surgery, it's less painful. So once he gets out of surgery, some things that he could be doing are once again going to be RICE, because it's still going to be very painful for him, but also doing some heel slides and some hanging leg extensions, just to keep building the muscle and help getting the neuromuscular junction or the neuromuscular connection back intact. So that would be the first phase, which is the acute phase. The next phase would be starting to put some more pressure on it. So doing things like some TRX supported squats, some TRX supported Bosu ball squats. It's going to help him with his balance, as well as putting weight back on his leg. Some other things that will help him are going to be partial squats, just putting pressure and weight back on that knee, start getting it used to what it was once able to do. Steps ups and steps down, as well as stationary biking. Stationary biking is a really good one because there's not a high risk of injury with this one, but it's still going to get his blood flowing, get his muscles going, and help with that. This is also going to help him in rebuilding the neuromuscular connection, just helping him to get back to being able to use his leg at a somewhat functional functional pace. The next phase is going to be going back to the gym and doing some stationary shooting, just so he's able to keep his skills sharp. And it's not going to require him to use his legs a whole lot, but it's still going to require him to jump a little bit, maybe move around a little bit, just keeping those legs moving. You want to stay on your feet with this injury because it's just going to help put the weight back on. It's going to help you get back sooner. Some other things that could help him during this phase is going to be some running. So getting him with the strength and conditioning people to help him do some running work, some cutting work. Doesn't have to start off at full speed, but as time progresses, you're going to want to see him to get faster and faster and get back to his fuller speed. Some of the exercises that he could be doing are going to be things like squats, lunges once again starting off small but slowly working your way back up to where you once were. And finally, the last stage is be getting him back to his sport. Meaning he's able to run at full speed, he's able to cut at full speed, he's able to jump properly and land properly, and he's able to play in practice without pain. Without pain. So some things that should be avoided in rehab are going to be moving on to the next stage too fast. If you do this, this is going to be a great lead to re-injury, which is what we do not want to do. So making sure that he's properly prepared and ready for the next phase before moving on to what the next phase is going to be. Some things that are going to really be helpful for him during this time are going to be stretching, massages, some heat, just helping his muscles to not get super stiff and keeping them sore because they are going to be being worked on a lot. So in order to return to sport, I would need to see that Jamal Murray is able to run at full speed, he's able to cut properly and jump and land properly. The major thing that I'm going to be looking for is that his injured leg and his non-injured leg are both equal. Then, because if they're not equal, it's just going to lead to another re-injury because one of the legs is going to be overcompensating for the other one, which is going to be bad. It's going to be bad for his form. It's just going to re-lead to another injury, which is what we do not want to happen. If that is the case, I would clear him to return to his sport. If both of his legs are equal in what they're doing, I'd say he's good to go back to his sport. And the sources that I used for this video are ESPN and SportingNews.com. Thank you.